Jake Morrison checked his watch and sighed. Only 2 hours left on his shift, and then he could go home to his small apartment and maybe catch some sleep before his next job. Working 3 different security jobs to pay rent wasn't easy, but it was better than being unemployed in New Angeles. The spaceport was quieter than usual tonight. Most of the cargo ships had finished loading hours ago, and only a few late arrivals were still unloading their goods. Jake walked his usual route through the cargo bays, checking doors and making sure everything was secure. That's when he heard the voices. "Please, I have done nothing wrong," a female voice said. The accent was strange, musical in a way that human voices never were. "My papers are all correct. Look, see?" Jake turned the corner and saw 3 figures near Cargo Bay 7. 2 tall aliens in the dark blue uniforms of the Galactic Authority Police stood over a much smaller alien. The woman was maybe 4 feet tall with pale purple skin and 4 thin arms. Her large amber eyes were wide with fear. The lead officer was a Corvan, one of those insect-like aliens with hard shell armor covering most of his body. His mandibles clicked as he spoke. "Your kind is not welcome in this area. You will come with us now." "But I am merchant," the woman protested, holding up a small device. "See, I have permit to be here during loading hours. I collect my cargo, nothing more." The second officer, tall and thin with crystal growths along his arms, laughed. "Permits mean nothing. You are trespassing." Jake frowned. He knew the rules for this section of the spaceport. Merchants with proper permits were allowed in the cargo areas during specific hours, and those hours didn't end until midnight. It was only 10:30. The third officer, another Corvan, grabbed the woman's upper arms and pulled them behind her back. She cried out in pain as energy restraints appeared around her wrists. "Hey," Jake called out, walking toward them. "What's going on here?" The lead Corvan turned his compound eyes toward Jake. "Move along, human. This is official authority business." "She says she has a permit," Jake said, stopping a few feet away. "And this is a legal zone during loading hours." "Are you questioning authority procedures?" the crystal-armed officer asked. His voice was cold and threatening. Jake looked at the small alien woman. She was clearly terrified, and her forearms were now bound so tightly behind her back that her purple skin was turning darker. Whatever was happening here, it didn't feel right. "I'm just saying she might be telling the truth about the permit," Jake said carefully. "Maybe you could check it before arresting her?" The lead Corvan stepped closer to Jake. Even though Jake was 6 feet tall, the alien towered over him. Humans should learn to mind their own business. Your species is new to the galaxy. You do not understand how things work. "I understand right and wrong," Jake replied. The woman looked up at him with hope in her large eyes. "Thank you for speaking for me. I am Zira. I sell healing crystals from my home world. I harm no one." "Shut up," the third officer snarled, yanking on her restraints. Zira gasped in pain. That was enough for Jake. He stepped forward. "Let her go. If she has a permit, she has a right to be here." The lead Corvan's mandibles clicked rapidly. "You dare to interfere with authority officers? That is a serious crime." "Arresting someone illegally is also a serious crime," Jake shot back. The tension in the air was thick. Jake could feel his heart pounding, but he didn't back down. Growing up in the rough neighborhoods of Detroit had taught him to recognize bullies, and these 3 officers were definitely bullying this small woman. "You have made a mistake, human," the crystal-armed officer said. He reached for something on his belt. Jake didn't wait to see what it was. He lunged forward, grabbing the officer's arm before he could draw his weapon. They struggled for a moment before Jake managed to twist the alien's arm behind his back. The other 2 officers moved to help their partner, but Jake was already spinning away from them. He grabbed a metal cargo hook from a nearby container and swung it in a wide arc. The officers jumped back to avoid being hit. "Run!" Jake shouted to Zira. The small alien didn't need to be told twice. Despite having her arms bound, she rolled behind a large shipping container and disappeared into the maze of cargo boxes. "You will pay for this interference," the lead Corvan roared. He charged at Jake, his armored fists swinging. Jake ducked under the first punch but couldn't avoid the second. The Corvan's fist connected with his ribs, sending pain shooting through his chest. He stumbled backward, gasping. The crystal-armed officer came at him from the side, but Jake swung the cargo hook again, catching the alien in the shoulder. The officer cried out and fell back. For a few minutes, Jake held his own. His smaller size let him move faster than the heavily armored officers, and the cargo hook gave him some reach. but 3 against 1 was too much, especially when the 3 had better weapons and armor. The third officer finally got behind Jake and tackled him to the ground. The cargo hook skittered away across the floor. The other 2 officers surrounded him, their weapons drawn. "You have assaulted officers of the Galactic Authority," the lead Corvin said, breathing hard. "You will be arrested and charged. For stopping you from illegally arresting an innocent person?" Jake wheezed from the ground. "She was not innocent. She is the wife of a dangerous criminal." Jake's blood went cold. "What?" "The woman you helped escape is married to Vex Korthak, leader of the Crimson Nebula crime syndicate. We were paid good money to bring her in quietly." "Paid by who?" The officer's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "By people who want to send a message to her husband." Jake realized what had happened. These weren't real arrests. This was a kidnapping, planned by whoever wanted to hurt this Vex Korthak person, and he had just stopped it. The officers left him on the cargo bay floor, bloody and bruised. They spent another hour searching for Zira, but she had vanished completely. Eventually they gave up and left, warning Jake that he would face serious consequences for interfering with their operation. Jake lay on the cold metal floor, staring up at the cargo bay ceiling. Every part of his body hurt, and he was pretty sure at least one rib was cracked. But somehow he didn't regret what he had done. He had seen someone in trouble and helped them. It was as simple as that. Jake had no idea that his simple act of kindness was about to change the course of galactic history. He had no idea that Vex Korthak would learn what he had done, and he definitely had no idea that by tomorrow morning, 200 alien warships would be surrounding Earth. All he knew was that he had done the right thing. For Jake Morrison, that was enough. Jake woke up in the spaceport medical bay with his head pounding and his ribs on fire. The white ceiling tiles above him looked fuzzy, and it took him a few seconds to remember where he was and why everything hurt so much. The fight with the authority officers came back to him slowly. He remembered helping the small purple alien woman escape, getting beaten up for his trouble, and then crawling to the emergency call box near the cargo bay. After that, everything was blank. "You are awake," said a voice that definitely did not belong to any human doctor. Jake turned his head and immediately wished he hadn't. Standing next to his bed was the most terrifying creature he had ever seen, nearly 8 feet tall, covered in black armor that looked like it had grown from his skin. With 4 arms that ended in claws sharp enough to cut steel, the alien's face was hidden behind a helmet, but his eyes glowed red in the darkness. "Don't move too fast," the creature said in a deep voice that seemed to vibrate through the floor. "You have 3 broken ribs and a concussion. Who are you?" Jake asked, his voice coming out as a croak. "My name is Vex Korthak." Jake's heart stopped. That was the name the corrupt officers had mentioned. The crime boss whose wife he had helped escape. Jake tried to sit up, but pain shot through his chest. "Relax," Vex said. "If I wanted you dead, you would already be dead." "Look, I didn't know who she was," Jake said quickly. "I just saw someone in trouble and tried to help." "Yes," Vex said simply. "That is why you are still alive." Jake looked around the medical bay and noticed for the first time that there were other aliens in the room. 6 of them, all armed with weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. They stood perfectly still like statues, but their eyes never stopped moving. "You saved my wife," Vex continued. "Zira told me everything that happened. How you confronted 3 armed officers. How you fought them even though you had no weapons. How you told her to run while you held them off. Anyone would have done the same thing." Vex's helmet tilted slightly. "No, they would not." The crime lord moved closer to Jake's bed. Despite his size, he moved with a grace that was somehow even more frightening than if he had stomped around like a monster. "Do you know what my wife means to me, Jake Morrison?" Jake shook his head. "She is my heart, my soul, my reason for living. Without her, I am nothing but a weapon pointed at the galaxy's throat." One of the other aliens in the room stepped forward and said something in a language that sounded like grinding metal. Vex nodded and turned back to Jake. "My lieutenant reminds me that you do not know who I am. I am the leader of the Crimson Nebula Syndicate. We control shipping routes, smuggling operations, and protection services across 7 star systems." Jake felt his stomach drop. "You're a crime boss." "I prefer to think of myself as a businessman who operates outside traditional legal frameworks," Vex said. "But yes, your authorities would call me a criminal." "Great," Jake muttered. "I helped a crime boss's wife." The officers who attacked Zero were not acting officially, Vex continued. They were hired by my enemies to kidnap her. They planned to use her as leverage against me, to force me to give up territory or resources. Jake stared at the alien. You mean they were going to torture her? Worse. They were going to kill her slowly and send me recordings of her death. The casual way Vex said it made Jake's blood run cold. That's horrible. Such is the way of the galaxy, Vex said. The strong prey upon the weak. The powerful use whatever methods necessary to maintain their power. It has been this way for thousands of years. But you stopped it, Jake said. You could have just taken revenge on those officers. I will take revenge on those officers, Vex said matter-of-factly. But that is not why I am here. Jake waited for him to continue. You did something last night that I have never seen before, Vex said. You risked your life for a complete stranger. You expected no reward, no payment, no recognition. You simply saw someone in need and decided to help. So in my 200 years of existence, I have traveled to over 50 worlds and dealt with dozens of species. I have never encountered behavior like yours. Jake frowned. What do you mean? Most beings in the galaxy operate on simple principles. They help family members because of blood loyalty. They help allies because of mutual benefit. They help powerful individuals because they want protection or rewards. Vex paused. But you helped my wife because she was in trouble. That is all. That's just being a decent person. Decent, Vex repeated slowly, as if testing the word. Tell me, Jake Morrison, is this behavior common among humans? Jake thought about it. I guess so. I mean, most people try to help others when they can. Even strangers? Especially strangers. If someone needs help, you help them. It doesn't matter who they are. The room fell silent. Jake could hear the hum of the medical equipment and the distant sounds of ships landing and taking off outside. The other aliens in the room were staring at him like he had just claimed he could fly. Fascinating, Vex said finally. My research into human behavior suggests you are telling the truth. Humans regularly risk themselves for others with no expectation of reward. You researched us? I have been studying your species since last night. Public records, cultural databases, historical accounts. Humans have a remarkable tendency toward what you call heroism. Jake shifted uncomfortably in his bed. We're not all heroes, perhaps not. But the capacity exists in most of your population. Do you understand how rare that is? I'm starting to get the idea. Vex moved to the window and looked out at the stars. The galaxy is not a kind place, Jake Morrison. Species rise and fall based on their ability to be ruthless. Compassion is seen as weakness. Mercy is seen as stupidity. That's a pretty dark way to look at things. It is reality, Vex said. Until now. Jake's communicator on the bedside table began beeping frantically. He reached for it with his good arm and saw dozens of emergency alerts flooding the screen. News feeds were going crazy with reports about massive alien ships appearing throughout human space. What's happening? Jake asked, though he was starting to suspect he already knew. Vex turned back to him. I have dispatched 200 of my finest vessels to strategic locations throughout your solar system and nearby colonies. You invaded us? I am protecting you. From what? From the consequences of your compassion. Vex's red eyes seemed to glow brighter. Word will spread throughout the galaxy about what you did. Some species will see humans as a threat to the natural order. Others will see you as prey to be exploited. Jake stared at him. You're protecting my entire species because I helped one person? I am protecting your species because you represent something precious and rare. A people who have maintained their compassion despite gaining the technology to be cruel. Vex moved back to the bed. You have earned my respect, Jake Morrison. More than that, you have earned my protection. I don't understand. By tomorrow, every corrupt official, every rival gang, every enemy I have made will know that humans are under my protection. They will know that harming any of you would be the same as declaring war on me. Jake's mind reeled. You're starting a war over one act of kindness? I am preventing a war, Vex corrected. Your species is about to become the most protected group of beings in the galaxy. Jake looked at his communicator again. The news reports were getting more frantic. Government officials were demanding answers. Military leaders were calling for emergency sessions. My supervisor is going to be really upset that I missed my shift, Jake said weakly. For the first time, Vex made a sound that might have been laughter. I believe you have found new employment. Jake Morrison, congratulations. You are now humanity's first ambassador to the criminal underworld. Jake closed his eyes and tried to process everything that had happened. 24 hours ago, he had been a minimum wage security guard. Now he was apparently the reason why 200 alien warships had surrounded Earth, all because he couldn't walk past someone who needed help. This is insane, he muttered. Welcome to galactic politics, Vex replied. Admiral Lisa Carter stood in the command center of Luna Station, staring at the tactical display with a mixture of fear and confusion. 200 alien warships had appeared around Earth and its colonies 6 hours ago. They hadn't fired a single shot or made any demands. They just sat there in space waiting. Any word from the ships? She asked her communications officer. Nothing, Admiral. They're not jamming our signals, but they won't respond to any of our messages. It's like they're guarding something. Carter had been in charge of Earth's space defenses for 15 years. She had dealt with pirates, hostile aliens, and even a few invasion attempts, but she had never seen anything like this. The ships were sleek and dangerous-looking, built for war. Worse, they had appeared without any warning from Earth's sensors, which meant their technology was far ahead of anything humans had. Admiral, Lieutenant Commander Rick Hayes said, running up to her station, "We're getting a transmission from New Angeles Spaceport. It's coming through on an emergency channel. Put it on the main screen." The display flickered and showed what looked like a medical bay. A young human man was sitting on a bed looking uncomfortable. Next to him stood the most frightening alien Carter had ever seen. 8 feet tall, covered in black armor with 4 arms and glowing red eyes. Hello? The human said, waving awkwardly at the camera. "I think I might have accidentally started something." Carter blinked. "Who is this? How did you get on this channel?" The massive alien stepped forward. "I am Vex Korthak, leader of the Crimson Nebula Syndicate. The ships surrounding your worlds belong to me." Several officers in the command center reached for their weapons, but Carter held up her hand to stop them. "I'm Admiral Carter, commanding Earth's defense forces. Are you invading us?" "No," Vex said simply. "I am protecting you." "Protecting us from what?" Vex gestured toward the human. "This is Jake Morrison. Last night he risked his life to save my wife from corrupt police officers who planned to kidnap her. He expected no reward and asked for no payment. He fought because it was the right thing to do." Carter looked at Jake, who was turning red with embarrassment. "You're telling me one man's actions brought 200 warships to our doorstep?" "Your species fascinates me, Admiral Carter," Vex continued. "In my 2 centuries of life, I have rarely seen beings willing to sacrifice for strangers. Yet my research suggests this behavior is common among humans." "Research?" Carter's voice was sharp, nothing invasive. "Public records, news reports, historical data. Humans regularly risk themselves for others. In wars, disasters, even daily life. You call some individuals heroes, but the capacity seems to exist in most of your people." Jake shifted on his bed. "Look, I just helped someone who needed help. It's not a big deal." "It is the biggest deal in the galaxy," Vex said firmly. "Do you know how many species would have walked past my wife's situation? How many would have helped the corrupt officers for personal gain?" Carter was beginning to understand something that chilled her to the bone. "You're saying other species don't help strangers?" "Not without significant personal benefit. The galactic community operates on power and mutual advantage. Helping others without reward is seen as weakness, a flaw that evolution should have removed." Vex's red eyes focused on the camera. "But humans seem to have evolved differently. So you're protecting us because we're nice?" Rick asked, not believing what he was hearing. "I am protecting you because you represent something precious and rare," Vex corrected. "A species that has kept its compassion despite gaining the power to be cruel. Jake Morrison's actions prove that humanity deserves to survive." Carter felt ice in her veins. "Deserves to survive? Were we in danger?" "More than you know. There are species in the galaxy that view compassion as a disease to be cured. When word spreads of human behavior, and it will spread, some will see you as a threat to the natural order. Others will see you as easy prey." The alien crime lord's voice dropped to a threatening growl. "My message to the galaxy is simple. Humanity is under the protection of the Crimson Nebula Syndicate. Anyone who harms them harms us. Anyone who threatens them threatens us." Jake looked around nervously. "Is this legal? Can you just declare protection over an entire species?" "Legal is a flexible concept when you control 7 star systems and have the firepower to enforce your decisions. Vex replied with what might have been amusement. But yes, by galactic law, I can extend syndicate protection to any group I choose. Carter realized she was watching history being made. Humanity had just gained the protection of what sounded like one of the galaxy's most powerful criminal organizations, all because a security guard had decided to help someone in trouble. What happens now? She asked. Before Vex could answer, alarms started blaring throughout the command center. New contacts were appearing on the tactical display. A dozen large ships had just dropped out of hyperspace near Mars. "Admiral," the sensor operator called out. "Those are Galactic Authority battleships. They're powering weapons and moving toward Earth." On the screen, Vex's posture changed. His forearms moved to controls that Jake couldn't see, and his red eyes seemed to glow brighter. "It seems we will have our first test sooner than expected," Vex said calmly. The main communication channel crackled to life. A new voice, cold and mechanical, filled the command center. "This is High Magistrate Thorak of the Galactic Authority. By order of the Council, the illegal protection of the human species by criminal elements is declared null and void. Humans will submit to authority jurisdiction immediately or face the consequences." Carter felt her blood pressure spike. "We're not under anyone's jurisdiction. Earth is an independent world. Your independence was conditional on following galactic law," Thorak replied. "Allying with known criminals violates that law." Jake grabbed the microphone. "This is Jake Morrison. I want to say something. You are the aberrant who interfered with authority operations," Thorak said. "Your actions have caused considerable trouble." "My actions saved an innocent person from being kidnapped," Jake replied steadily. "And I'd do it again. Would you? Even knowing the consequences? Your species faces extinction if you continue this criminal alliance." Jake looked at Carter, then at Vex, then back at the camera. The weight of his entire species' future was on his shoulders. He thought about Zira, the small purple woman he'd helped, and how grateful she'd been for simple kindness. "High Magistrate Thorak, let me ask you something. Speak. If your wife was being illegally hurt by corrupt officers, would you want someone to help her?" There was a pause. "That scenario is not relevant to this situation." "It's completely relevant," Jake said. "That's exactly what happened. Your officers were paid to kidnap an innocent woman. When I saw someone in trouble, I helped. That's what humans do." "Humans are weak," Thorak declared. "Your compassion will destroy you." Jake smiled, and it wasn't a friendly expression. "You know what, Thorak? You might be right. Humans are too willing to help others, too quick to stand up for what's right, too eager to sacrifice for strangers." He paused. "But that's exactly why we have friends like Vex." On the tactical display, Carter watched as Crimson Nebula ships moved into attack formation around the Authority vessels. More ships were arriving every minute, reinforcements that Vex had quietly called. "You see," Jake continued, "you're missing the point. This isn't about criminals protecting humans. This is about people who value honor and loyalty standing together against bullies." Vex's voice joined the transmission.
"High Magistrate Thorak, your officers attempted to kidnap my wife for money."
Jake Morrison stopped this crime when he could have walked away. He chose to do what was right despite the cost. "The Crimson Nebula Syndicate considers Jake Morrison and all humans to be family," Vex continued. "We do not abandon family. We do not allow family to be threatened. And we do not negotiate with kidnappers." On the display, Carter could see that Thorak's ships were now surrounded 3-1. The tactical advantage was overwhelming. "This is not over," Thorak transmitted. "The Authority will remember this defiance." "So will we," Jake replied. "But here's what you don't understand, Thorak. When humans stand up for what's right, we don't just make enemies. We make friends. Really good friends." The Authority ships retreated, jumping back into hyperspace. The command center erupted in cheers, but Carter knew this was just the beginning. Word would spread throughout the galaxy about humans and their dangerous protectors. As the excitement died down, Vex turned back to the camera. "Your species has just announced to the galaxy that compassion is not weakness. It is strength that attracts strength." Jake looked tired but determined. "I have a feeling things are about to get complicated." "Yes," Vex agreed, "but also more interesting. The galaxy is about to learn why human friendship is worth 200 warships." Carter stared out at the stars, wondering what challenges lay ahead. Humanity had just passed its first test under alien protection, but she suspected much greater trials were coming. The galaxy would never be the same. 3 weeks after Vex Korthak's fleet arrived at Earth, Jake Morrison was still getting used to his new life. The small apartment he used to call home had been replaced with a luxury suite on Luna Station. Instead of working 3 security jobs to pay rent, he now spent his days learning about galactic politics and alien cultures. It wasn't easy. Jake had never finished college, and suddenly he was expected to understand trade agreements, territorial disputes, and diplomatic protocols that had been developed over thousands of years. But Vex had been patient with him, and slowly Jake was beginning to understand how the galaxy really worked. On this particular morning, Jake was sitting in his quarters reading reports about various alien species when the alarm started blaring. Red lights flashed in the corridors, and he could hear the sound of running feet outside his door. "Jake," came a voice over the intercom. It was Commander Sarah Brooks, the human military officer, who had been assigned to work with him. "We need you in the command center immediately." Jake grabbed his jacket and ran through the corridors. Luna Station was buzzing with activity as human and alien crew members rushed to their positions. When he reached the command center, he found Admiral Carter standing next to Vex at the main tactical display. "What's happening?" Jake asked. "The hierarchy of Voss," Carter replied grimly. "They're one of the oldest and most powerful species in the Galactic Authority. They've come to test our arrangement." Jake looked at the tactical display and felt his stomach drop. Dozens of massive warships had appeared at the edge of the solar system. Each ship was easily twice the size of Vex's largest vessel, and they were all moving toward Earth in perfect formation. "How many ships?" Jake asked. 47 battleships, 12 carriers, and support vessels," Vex replied calmly. "The hierarchy does not do anything small." On the main screen, an alien that looked like a cross between a praying mantis and a spider appeared. Its voice was cold and mechanical when it spoke. "I am High Magistrate Thorak of the hierarchy of Voss. By order of the Galactic Authority Council, the illegal protection of the human species by criminal elements must end immediately. You have 1 hour to surrender or we will take action." Admiral Carter stepped forward. "This is Admiral Carter of Earth Defense. We are not surrendering anything. Our alliance with the Crimson Nebula Syndicate is legal under galactic law. Legal technicalities will not save you," Thorak replied. "The hierarchy has decided that human compassion represents a threat to galactic stability. Your species spreads dangerous ideas about helping the weak. This cannot be allowed to continue." Jake felt anger rising in his chest. "Dangerous ideas? We're talking about basic human decency." Thorak's compound eyes focused on him through the screen. "You are the aberrant who started this crisis. Your interference with authority operations has caused significant disruption to the natural order." "Good," Jake said firmly. "If your natural order includes kidnapping innocent people, then it needs to be disrupted. You do not understand the consequences of your actions," Thorak continued. "Already, 17 species have withdrawn from authority membership to join your so-called Compassion Alliance. Dozens more are demanding changes to authority policies. Trade routes that have been controlled by authority corporations for centuries are now being managed by cooperative groups." Vex stepped up beside Jake. "You say this like it is a bad thing." "It is chaos," Thorak replied. "For 3,000 years, the hierarchy has maintained order in this galaxy. The strong rule, the weak serve, and everyone knows their place. Your human concepts of equality and mutual aid threaten everything we have built." Jake looked around the command center. Human and alien officers were working side by side, sharing information and resources. Over the past 3 weeks, he had watched as representatives from dozens of species had come to Luna Station, seeking alliance with humanity and the Crimson Nebula Syndicate. "Maybe your order needed to be threatened," Jake said. "We will see how brave you are when facing real consequences," Thorak replied. "You have 30 minutes remaining." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in tense silence. Admiral Carter immediately began coordinating with her officers, preparing Earth's defenses for what looked like an impossible fight. Vex was doing the same with his forces, but Jake could see the concern in his red eyes. "How bad is this?" Jake asked quietly. "Very bad," Vex admitted. "The hierarchy of Voss has one of the most powerful fleets in the galaxy. They have technology that is centuries ahead of most species. Can we win? Unlikely. But we can make them pay a heavy price for their victory." Jake felt the weight of responsibility crushing down on him. Billions of humans were about to die because he had decided to help someone in trouble. The thought made him sick to his stomach. "There has to be another way," he said. "What are you thinking?" Carter asked, overhearing their conversation. Jake stared at the tactical display, watching as the hierarchy ships moved closer to Earth. An idea was forming in his mind, but it was risky. Very risky. "Let me talk to them," he said. "Absolutely not," Carter replied immediately. "You're not trained for this kind of negotiation." "I'm not trained for any of this," Jake pointed out. "But I'm the reason this started. Maybe I can find a way to end it without a war." Beck studied him carefully. "What do you have in mind?" "I want to challenge their basic assumptions," Jake said. "They think human compassion is weakness. They think helping others makes us vulnerable. But what if we can prove them wrong?" "How?" Jake took a deep breath. "By showing them that our compassion makes us stronger, not weaker. That when humans stand up for what's right, we don't stand alone." Admiral Carter shook her head. "Jake, these are some of the most dangerous beings in the galaxy. They don't care about philosophical arguments." "Then we don't give them philosophy," Jake replied. "We give them proof." Before anyone could stop him, Jake walked to the communications console and opened a channel to the hierarchy fleet. "High Magistrate Thorak, this is Jake Morrison. I want to make you an offer." The alien's image appeared on the screen again, its mandibles clicking with what might have been amusement. "You wish to surrender? I want to make a deal. You say human compassion is weakness. You say helping others makes us vulnerable. Prove it. Explain." Jake felt every eye in the command center focused on him. His mouth was dry, but he forced himself to continue. "Give me one of your people. Someone who's been injured or is in trouble. Let me help them. The way I helped Zira. If I do it expecting no reward, no payment, no advantage, and if other humans do the same thing, will you accept that our compassion might actually be strength?" The command center fell silent. Even Vex was staring at Jake with surprise. "You would risk your life for one of my people?" Thorak asked slowly. "That's what humans do," Jake replied. "We help people who need help. It doesn't matter if they're our enemies." There was a long pause. Jake could see other aliens on Thorak's bridge, and they seemed to be having some kind of heated discussion. "Interesting," Thorak said finally. "Very well. We will provide a test subject. But if you fail, if you show any sign of expecting reward or trying to gain advantage, your species will face the consequences. And if you succeed, the hierarchy of Voss will withdraw and allow your alliance to continue unmolested." Jake nodded. "Deal." As the transmission ended, Admiral Carter grabbed his arm. "Jake, what have you done?" "Hopefully," Jake replied, watching the tactical display as one small ship separated from the hierarchy fleet and headed toward Luna Station. "I've just saved humanity by proving that doing the right thing is never wrong." Vex placed one of his massive hands on Jake's shoulder. "You continue to surprise me, Jake Morrison. Let us hope your faith in human nature is not misplaced." Jake watched the approaching ship and tried to ignore the fear in his stomach. In a few hours, he would either prove that human compassion was humanity's greatest strength, or he would be responsible for the destruction of his entire species. No pressure at all. Jake Morrison stood in the docking bay of Luna Station, watching as the hierarchy shuttle landed. His hands were sweating and he could feel his heart pounding in his chest. In a few minutes, he would either prove that human compassion was a strength, or he would doom his entire species to destruction. Admiral Carter stood beside him, along with Vex and several other officers. The docking bay was surrounded by security personnel, both human and alien, though Jake doubted they would be much help if things went wrong. "Remember," Vex said quietly, "this is a test. They will try to make you fail. Do not expect gratitude or friendship from whoever they bring." "I understand," Jake replied, though he wasn't sure he really did. The shuttle door opened with a hiss of escaping air. Two hierarchy soldiers emerged first, their insect-like bodies covered in heavy armor. Between them, they carried a third figure who was clearly injured. Jake's breath caught in his throat. The injured being was unlike anything he had ever seen. It looked like a giant spider made of living crystal, about the size of a human child. Several of its legs were broken and cracks ran through its translucent body. Green fluid that might have been blood leaked from its wounds. "This is Keth," one of the soldiers said in a mechanical voice. "It was injured in a mining accident on one of our worlds. The damage is not immediately fatal, but it will die within hours without proper medical treatment." Jake stepped forward, but the soldier held up a hand to stop him. "Understand this, human. Keth is a criminal. It stole food from the mining operation to feed weaker workers who could not meet their quotas. By our law, it deserves to die for this crime. Jake felt anger rising in his chest. It was feeding hungry people. That's not a crime. It is theft, the soldier replied coldly. Resources belong to those strong enough to claim them. Sharing with the weak only makes everyone weaker. The injured crystal being Keth looked up at Jake with eyes that swirled with different colors. Despite its pain, it spoke in a voice like wind chimes. Do not help me, soft one. I am criminal. Let me die with honor. Jake knelt down beside the creature, ignoring the weapons that the hierarchy soldiers pointed at him. Up close, he could see that Keth's injuries were severe. Without medical attention, it would indeed die soon. What kind of medical treatment do you need? Jake asked. My people require silicon compounds to repair crystal damage, Keth replied weakly. But such treatments are expensive. I am not worth the cost. Jake looked up at Admiral Carter. Do we have silicon compounds in the medical bay? Some, she replied. But Jake, if this is a trick... It's not a trick, Jake said firmly. He turned to the hierarchy soldiers. I'm taking Keth to our medical bay. I'm going to try to save its life. Why? One of the soldiers asked. You gain nothing from this action. Keth cannot repay you. Its own people consider it worthless. Jake carefully picked up the injured creature, trying not to cause more damage to its crystal body. Because someone needs help and I can provide it. That's reason enough. The journey to the medical bay took 10 minutes. Jake carried Keth the entire way, while the hierarchy soldiers followed behind. Dr. Martinez, the station's chief medical officer, was waiting for them. I've prepared silicon compounds and set up a healing chamber, she said. But I should warn you, I've never treated a crystal-based life form before. Neither have I, Jake replied. But we're going to try. For the next 6 hours, Jake worked alongside Dr. Martinez and the medical team to save Keth's life. They carefully cleaned the creature's wounds, applied silicon compounds to the cracks in its body, and monitored its vital signs. Jake never left the medical bay even when the hierarchy soldiers suggested he had done enough. Why do you stay? Keth asked during one of its conscious moments. Your duty is finished. My duty isn't finished until you're healed, Jake replied, adjusting the creature's position to make it more comfortable. But I am criminal. Worthless thief, Jake shook his head. You fed hungry people. That makes you a hero in my book. As word spread throughout Luna Station about what Jake was doing, something remarkable began to happen. Other humans started arriving at the medical bay. Some brought food and water for Jake and the medical team. Others offered to help with the treatment, even though they had no medical training. Commander Brooks arrived with blankets. Lieutenant Hayes brought entertainment tablets to help pass the time. Even Admiral Carter stopped by regularly to check on their progress. What are they doing? One of the hierarchy soldiers asked, watching as a steady stream of humans came and went. They're helping, Jake replied simply. But they gain nothing from this. They gain the knowledge that they did the right thing. By the 8th hour, Keth's condition had stabilized. The cracks in its crystal body were healing, and the green fluid had stopped leaking from its wounds. Dr. Martinez announced that the creature would make a full recovery. Impossible, one of the hierarchy soldiers muttered. The medical procedures alone must cost thousands of credits. Why would you spend so much on a worthless criminal? Because every life has value, Jake replied, exhausted but relieved. High Magistrate Thorak arrived at the medical bay just as Keth was taking its first steps on newly healed legs. The massive insect leader looked around at the humans who had gathered to celebrate the creature's recovery. I do not understand, Thorak said slowly. You have spent significant resources to save the life of a being that can offer you nothing in return. Your own people assisted without being ordered to do so. This behavior makes no logical sense. Jake sat down heavily in a chair, tired from the long day. Maybe logic isn't everything. Explain. Helping others isn't about logic or profit or even making sense, Jake said. It's about recognizing that we're all connected. When someone suffers, we all suffer a little bit. When someone is helped, we all benefit. Keth approached Jake slowly, its crystal body now glowing with health. You saved my life, Jake Morrison. I owe you everything. You don't owe me anything, Jake replied. Just remember that there are people in the galaxy who care about others. And maybe when you see someone who needs help, you'll help them too. The crystal creature's eyes swirled with new colors. I will remember. Thorak stared at the scene for a long moment. His soldiers looked confused, unable to understand what they had witnessed. "The test is complete," Thorak announced finally. "Jake Morrison has proven that human compassion is not weakness. Your species operates by principles that we do not understand, but we can no longer deny their effectiveness." "What does that mean?" Admiral Carter asked. "It means the hierarchy of Voss withdraws its objection to the human alliance with the Crimson Nebula Syndicate," Thorak replied. "More than that, we acknowledge that human behavior represents a new model for galactic civilization." Jake looked up in surprise. "New model?" "For 3,000 years, the galaxy has operated on the principle that strength determines worth. You have shown us a different principle, that worth is inherent in all beings regardless of strength." Thorak's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "Perhaps it is time for the galaxy to learn new ways." Over the following months, word of what happened at Luna Station spread throughout the galaxy. Species that had been oppressed by the old order began to demand change. Trade agreements were rewritten to include protections for workers. Colonies that had been exploited gained the right to govern themselves. The Crimson Nebula Syndicate evolved from a criminal organization into something unprecedented, a galactic coalition dedicated to protecting the weak and promoting cooperation instead of exploitation. Vex remained its leader, but the Syndicate's mission had fundamentally changed. Jake found himself at the center of it all, serving as humanity's ambassador to what became known as the Compassion Alliance. It wasn't an easy job, and there were still species that opposed the new order, but slowly, steadily, the galaxy began to change. Keth recovered completely and became a leader among its own people, spreading the message that helping others was not weakness, but strength. The crystal being never forgot the human who had saved its life for no reason other than it was the right thing to do. 1 year after the incident in the New Angeles spaceport, Jake stood on the observation deck of Harmony Station, a massive facility that served as headquarters for the Compassion Alliance. Ships from hundreds of species came and went, carrying refugees to safety, supplies to disaster zones, and diplomats working to build a better galaxy. "Do you ever regret it?" Zira asked, joining him at the viewing window. Vex's wife had become a close friend over the months, and she often sought Jake out for quiet conversations. Jake watched a transport full of refugees dock at the station. They were fleeing a war in a distant system, and the Alliance would find them new homes where they could live in peace. "No," he said finally, "I don't regret it. What we've built here is bigger than any of us imagined. We're giving hope to people who had given up. The galaxy is changing because of what you did," Zira observed. "The galaxy is changing because enough people decided that compassion is stronger than cruelty," Jake corrected. "I just happened to be the first one to prove it." He looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere among them, beings who had once lived in fear were now living in hope. The galaxy would never be perfect, but it was better than it had been.